Language acquisition, heritage language acquisition and pedagogy, bilingualism, and teacher education. She's also interested in the development of OER materials, which is one of the reasons we're so happy that she's here. COERLL will be working with her and her graduate students to develop an open basic language, Spanish language program. So as you know, 20 years ago, MIT started something called OpenCourseWare. MIT told everybody they have to make all of their materials open to the general public. Hopefully, in a couple of years, we'll have a first year, second year basic Spanish program open to the world, which will be a huge, huge contribution. She has also recently published a book, Multiliteracies and Heritage Language Pedagogy, co-edited with Manel Lacorte and Paul Graves. So go to Amazon and buy it right now.
No, it's very expensive.
Oh, well, then don't buy it. Right, it's not open. So without further ado, Dr. Gabriela Zapata.
Hello.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting me. And everything that we've been talking about is very close to my heart. Okay. I am right now at Texas A&M University, but before I was there, I was at California State University, Monterey Bay. And what I'm going to talk about today was inspired by the students that I had there, the heritage students that I had there. California State University, Monterey Bay is in rural California. It's in Salinas, in the area of Salinas, seaside. And it's a Hispanic serving institution. So, most of the students there come from lower income families, rural families. And when I got there, I started having, a relationship with them because I was part of the language program, over there too. And then I did a study with them, and they really inspired me. So I decided. At the time, the university had a program for heritage speakers, but they were using an L2 textbook, which was extremely expensive, and it was completely inappropriate for what they needed. So I said, we can't go on doing this. And so I got a grant from the university, and I said, okay, I need to design materials, for these students. And they have to be open source, because we cannot ask them to spend, $130 on a stupid textbook, that has stereotypical, presentations of heritage speakers and, Latinos in the United States. And so that's how, my whole love story with multiliteracy pedagogies and learning by design was born. And this is what I'm going to talk to you about today. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just to briefly introduce the framework that I'm using, learning by design. I'm going to talk about their knowledge processes, what they mean by that. We will analyze some materials, and I'm going to give you some pedagogical suggestions. So it's going to be mostly practical. I'm going to show you what I've done, and I'm going to show you how we can connect a framework, and we can really create theoretically sound materials, that can also reflect who our students are. So that's my goal. So the first thing is to talk about the pedagogy of multiliteracies, which is, everyone is talking about it now, it seems, in the field of at least second language pedagogy, but I don't think a lot of people really know what this is about, okay? So the concept was introduced by the New London Group in 1996. This is a group of researchers and also educators, mostly British and Australian, that got together in New London, not in the United States, and not in London, in England. And then they got together and they said, okay, we have to change the way in which we are teaching our classes. We have this very old-fashioned idea of literacy as just being connected to the printed text. And then, our world is changing. We don't do things just, we don't write anymore. We do things, we use video, we use music, we use art to communicate ideas. So we have to stop talking about literacy. We need to talk about multiliteracies. And so it is defined as a framework that emphasizes, the multiplicity of languages, genres, and modalities present in any given social context, and advocates a pedagogy that puts this multiplicity at the center of the curriculum. Okay, so it also, so the whole idea is also that it promotes learners' agency with the goal of generating active and dynamic transformation when it comes to learning and when it comes to who our students are. So we have to stop just using printed text in our classes. We need to introduce other kinds of modalities. Okay, so that was their idea. And then, basically what they say is like, we live in a world where, meaning is made in ways that are implicitly multimodal. For example, yes, we have linguistic modes, but there's also an interface with oral, visual, audio, gestural, tactile, spatial patterns of meaning. And what we're doing is like we have that modes are complementing each other or one another if we have more than one mode. And then we are creating a different kind of meaning, and it's basically what it's our students' world, okay, our real world. All right, so what they talk about multi, and what is this multi? So first they talk about there's a context, okay, it's multi because it is community setting, there's a social role, there's interpersonal relations, identity, subject matter. And then there's also the different modalities that we use to communicate meaning. So it's written, visual, spatial, tactile, gestural, audio, oral. And then there's also a multi-dimension, and it's at the level of society, okay, because we have different identities, we belong to different groups, okay. But there's also at the level of mode, okay, because we use different modes to communicate. So we are multimodal, and our lives are multimodal, okay? All right. Now, these were the initial ideas, and then we have these two researchers, Mary Kalantzis and Bill Cope, both first in Australia, and then now they are at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And they took the original ideas of multiliteracies and they created a framework, a pedagogical framework, okay? And we'll talk about this in a minute. So this framework was first implemented in Australia in the year 2000 and has been subsequently applied to various projects in Australia, particularly with minority students, okay? Students, immigrant students learning English, but coming from a variety of countries and cultures, right? So the main premise is there are a couple of principles that we need to take into account. The main premise is that formal academic learning needs to integrate informal learning. That is to say, the experiences that permeate learners' personal worlds and lives, okay? So we have mostly, what is going on in our world nowadays is that our kids are learning more outside the academic environment than inside. And in order for us to really create learning, a learning experience that is meaningful to them, we have to integrate, we have to bring that informal learning into academic learning. So what I said is like, like I said, I just said this, but I see this with my kids, For example, my kids play Roblox, and maybe Roblox. It's a game, and it's incredible because it's an interface where it's text and also it's images, video, and it's incredible how much they are learning, just playing this game. And they assume identities, they create houses. My son, who has autism, created like a whole airport in Roblox, just using text and then creating, this alternative world. And then it's funny how he, for the first time, he's interacting with his sister, and they are interacting in Roblox. They are sitting next to each other, but they are inside the space playing. And it's incredible how much he's learned through Roblox. So it's, he is learning by playing this game. Even, how to interact with other kids, because you create these communities in the game. And for a child with autism, that's perfect, It's just the beginning. Okay. So then they suggest that the traditional methods found in informal education, for example, question answering exchanges, multiple choice activities, traditional exams, do not reflect the kind of reality and learning that students experience in their everyday life. So the whole idea is to integrate both. So the point of departure, again, is, what we've been hearing throughout the day is the learner, who our students are. So they refer to the first principle is the idea of belonging. So they emphasize the need to create an instructional environment to which learners can connect at a deep personal level and to which they feel they belong. Exactly what we just heard, about the AP class, okay? And then also, the second principle is the whole idea of transformation. So learners have to feel involved and they have to engage in the learning process, and then this has to result in a transformation at the personal and at the academic level. Okay? So, but for this transformation to take place, it is necessary to take the learner into new and unfamiliar terrains. However, for learning to occur, students need to stay in a zone of intelligibility and safety. That is to say, what we are doing cannot be too far away from their reality. This is very, very important for us to remember. So, why are belonging and transformation important in our classes, in our heritage classes, for example? Well, first of all, there is a cognitive dimension. So if we all know about our old friend David Osobal, who started with this, the whole idea that for learning to occur, learning must be meaningful and connected to learners' experience and previous knowledge. So this is important. There has to be a connection at the point of who they are, but at the point of topics that they know about. And then also the nature of our population. We've been talking about this the whole day. It's like it's heterogeneous, okay, our population of heritage learners. And then here I'm going to refer to Zizek, who has developed a prototype for what we mean a model of heritage language learning, in the sense that, some based on research and our experience, we know that, in general, we have different levels. Our learners can be at different levels of proficiency. They usually have an ethnic and cultural connection to the heritage language. Their dominance in a language other than the heritage language. They have implicit knowledge of the heritage language, because they've learned their language, their heritage language at home. They have some level of bilingualism, okay, and there is an early exposure to the heritage language in the home environment. And I think this is very useful for us. And so what can learning by design offer us? What can learning by design offer us when we talk about heritage learners? So the whole idea is that if productive learning is to happen, it cannot be based in a one-fits-all model. It has to be designed according to each individual learning situation. And this is where OER comes into place. We design materials, yes, that are for our population of students, but can be adapted to other populations of students. So what is this learning by design? How do they see learning? So we see that, first of all, we need to create, of course, materials that are related to our students. But how? What are the steps to creating these materials? Because that's the question. What are the steps? Okay. So learning is interpreted in learning by design as an active, dynamic process involving 4 interweaved knowledge processes. Okay, so students go through experiencing, conceptualizing, analyzing, and applying. Okay, and I will explain this in a minute. Don't worry. So the whole idea is that these 4 processes come into place because these are the 4 processes that we go through in informal learning. Okay. So what does this mean? For example, in experiencing known and new meanings, the whole idea is that we depart from known concepts and experiences and we move forward, okay, to explore new situations and information. So we always depart from what we know. That's our frame of reference, what we know, okay? Conceptualize meanings by naming. So then, here they refer to groupings into categories, classifying, defining, and with theory, the whole idea of looking at the particular, then looking at the general. Coming up with a general idea, coming up with a theory, that is to say, formulating generalizations and establishing connections among concepts, as well as developing theories. Then they go to analyze meanings functionally. Here we go back to what is particular. In our case, for example, when it comes to the language, we focus on structure and function. We establish logical connections between meaning and form. And also critically, we evaluate different perspectives, interests, and motives. We look at a text, any kind of text, and we go like, okay, why? What is the author trying to say? What is the message that the author is trying to convey? okay? And we can compare different kinds of texts, and then we can compare different kinds of meanings. And then, of course, I mean, students have to do something. So they need to apply these new meanings appropriately. That is to say, when they engage in real-life applications of knowledge based or very similar to what they've been exposed, and also creatively when they apply new knowledge in innovative and creative ways. And I will show you in a minute what that means. Okay, so this is how they see it, and that's the reason why I have the different concepts in color, okay? So you have it here, and Kalantzis and Cont say that, you can start anywhere, but knowing what we know about, COERLL, and it makes sense to start with the known, experiencing the known, and then going around and finishing up with applying, okay? So, okay, this sounds good, but how do we do this, okay? And now I will show you examples. In this Google folder, this one here, UT presentation, okay, I share that with Carl, and all this material, everything that I've said and I'm going to show you is there, okay? And also, you have chapter 3 of the book that Carl mentioned. That's the chapter, one of the chapters that I wrote, and I give examples of how I apply this, and then there's also a little study there that looks at beginning and then the end after instruction, okay? So you will have that. Don't buy the book, it's too expensive. No. Now, let's have a look at this. All right, so this is a module that I'm going to, it's a unit. So what I did at CSUMB was to create 4 different modules, and they were based on who my students were. So my students, like I said, they were lower income kids. Most of them came from monolingual families. Their parents work in the fields, with la fresa and also, lettuce. And so I said, okay, what is significant to them? So first of all, we started with the topic of immigration, which is in chapter 3 of I just mentioned, so that's where the module, I talk about that in that chapter. Then I started with this. This is the second module, which is labor. The third one was family and, the community, the third module. And the fourth module was what it means to be bicultural and bilingual, okay? But I'm going to show you this module. So we're going to start with experiencing. So it's divided into the different processes. So we'll start with experiencing the known. And again, thinking about multiliteracies, I said, okay, I need to have a combination of different things. So I had a combination of, art and video and printed text, and even, I had music. So a little bit of everything. So here we started with experiencing the know, and of course, the whole idea is that they had to look at this picture, which is beautiful. It's by the Siga, a wonderful Latino, artist. And they have to compare this to different photos showing. Let me show you here. Let's see what's going on. Okay, let's go like this. So I have different photos of different Hispanic workers in different. These photos are very, very interesting. So then these are all, as you can see, they're very positive, okay? And so the whole idea for them was to compare them, and then we were departing from the known, which is of course the agriculture, and then the whole experience that they have with agriculture in terms of work, and then the new was all these new photos of people in different professions, different positions, jobs, and so. The idea was to understand what message do they want to express, the authors, what do they want to emphasize in the art and the photographs. Would they say that the message is positive, and why or why not? And it is very positive. So the whole idea was for them to think about all the positive aspects, the positive roles that Latinos have in the workplace. And this was in preparation to introduce the next part. And the next part is a persuasive essay, okay? Because the whole idea, my objective was for them to learn to write a persuasive essay. So, un ensayo persuasivo. So what I found was this simple essay, that talks about the contributions of Hispanics to the workforce in the United States. So they were supposed to read the essay, okay, and they had to compare the photos and the essay, the message, okay. So that was experiencing the old, and now was experiencing the old and the new. And the new was the text, okay? So we start with that, and the whole idea of looking at the essay. And then they were supposed to answer questions, and they were supposed to understand, the content in terms of meaning of the text, okay? And the main idea, and then the similarities and differences between the messages conveyed by the pictures and the message conveyed by the persuasive essay, okay? So what I have here for you is, so this is an example of experiencing the known and experiencing the new. But what I have here is the kinds of activities that you can do, okay? The kind of things that you can do. Now, one thing that I have to say is that what I used were photos and a text that were not open source. I took them from a book, okay? So when I was preparing for this presentation, what I did was, and you will find that in the Google folder, I looked for photos that were open source that you can use instead of these photos, okay? So there is, and also one of the things that I learned working with Carl and his team is that sometimes it's okay to have a combination of open source and then copyrighted material, okay, as long as you cite and everything and you follow these. So you could have a combination of that. But anyways, so this was the beginning, okay? So my whole objective was for them to learn how to write a persuasive essay, yes? So we have the beginning, it's understanding the meaning, what is it that we do with a persuasive essay, okay? And then came conceptualizing, right? And I'm going to show you what we do in conceptualizing. I want you to please be patient with me because I have to open and close documents. Let me just get out of here like this. Okay, let's go to part 2. All right. So what do we do then with the persuasive essay if we want our students to learn how to write a persuasive essay? Well, first, they need to understand what a persuasive essay is, okay? And then they have to define what a persuasive essay is. And this is correct. So let's have a look at conceptualizing. Conceptualizing, in the conceptualizing stage, learning activities focus primarily on abstract concepts and theoretical synthesis, okay? So in this second part, what I did was to divide the persuasive essay into different paragraphs. And then students had to look at each paragraph, and then they have to find the main idea, the objectives, okay, and the evidence, okay, the evidence that was given for the objective of the main idea. And the same with everything. So then my objective was for them to understand how we organize a persuasive essay, okay, and what is it that we do in each paragraph in order for the essay to be persuasive, right? So they do that, and then, so this would be conceptualizing by naming. They name the different parts, okay? And then what they have to do is they have to basically give a definition of a persuasive essay. So based on the parts, based on the analysis that they do, what they are doing now is conceptualizing with theory. They are in this, so they go from the particular to the general. And then they go like, okay, what is a persuasive essay? Let's look at the analysis. What kind of information do I have? So a persuasive essay is, and then they create together a definition. So this is conceptualizing. So this is the beginning, okay? So, they understand then what we do with a persuasive essay, but what kind of language, what kind of strategies do we use to write a persuasive essay? And then we go to the language part, which is analyzing. And here we go to here what we do is to, we go to, again, we're putting everything together. We're putting, conceptualizing by naming, by theory, and then analyzing functionally. So we are analyzing the parts, taking into account what we know about persuasive essay. Now what we're doing is looking at, the ways in which we express the kind of language that you use to write a persuasive essay. And as you can see, I'm using some of the things that we've been using for decades in second language learning, which is, for example, text enhancement to draw your students' attention. So that's what you see. So we're looking at conjunctions, we're looking at ways in which we connect ideas, and the ways in which we connect ideas and evidence, all right? So this is how they do it. And students work together. That's another thing that I have to say. There's so much to say. Students work together. They work with, with other students, and they collaborate in order to understand, okay? So it's looking at, cohesion, it's looking at the language that we use to connect ideas. And also in this particular, with this particular essay, another focus, and I'm not going to focus, I don't have time, but then you will see it. Another linguistic aspect that I focus on in this particular essay was the use of the present tense, okay? Why do we use the present tense and all that? So, but then one of the things that we have to understand is that the text that with which we start, the multimodal text, the multimodal ensemble, be it picture or printed text, is going to be our source of everything. So we're going to use the examples from that particular text. We're going to help students understand from that particular text. So we'll work with the text throughout the whole unit. Okay, that's the important thing. So it has to be connected to your students' experience. So in my case, this is connected to what they know. It's like Latinos in the fields and Latinos in other aspects of life. Working in the United States, right? And also very, very positive, okay? So, right. So this is analyzing. And then, of course, it comes to the point that this is analyzing functionally, so you are looking at language, all right? But another important aspect is for them to understand that different modes and different ways of using language will convey different meanings. And this is analyzing critically. So the instructional focus is analyzing purposes and human intentions involved in knowledge, all right? So this is also very important. Who is the multimodal ensemble printed text for interpreting personal and cultural perspectives involved in knowledge? And what I did here was to introduce different other kinds of persuasive essays. For example, a video, a persuasive video. So what we have is first of all, we started again talking about what it was that persuasive essays do, and then we review the characteristics, okay, and then also I reminded them of the photos that we talked about, and then they were supposed to watch these two different videos, and these two videos were they are about the Bracero program, okay, and a lot of our students had experience with that because their grandparents had been braceros, okay. And these two videos are very different. This one is the official video that was created at the time by the government, okay, to talk about the braceros. And this one this is more from the braceros' point of view and all the negative aspects of the program. So they are two persuasive documents, okay, or ensembles, I should say, but they are very different. So what the students needed to do was to watch these, and then they were supposed to compare the photos, the essay, video 1 and video 2, in terms of different characteristics. So, for example, in terms of they have the objective, the structures and the resources, okay, because then here we go back to the whole idea of language, but also we will go back to that meta language that is going to be different for the visual and the printed. The tone, the attitude of the author or the director, and then the similarities and the differences between them. So in this case, we talked about So it's the whole idea of helping them to become multiliterate. It's not just knowing how to work with printed text, but also how to understand how similar and how different modalities work and are. Okay? So this was analyzing critically. So see how their process, how this is learning by design materialized in, a pedagogical material. We talked about, for example, what type of message they want to communicate, if there is one that is political or not, and then I asked them which of these messages they identified with the most. Okay, if either the photos, which is a very positive, the essay, which is also very positive towards Latinos, video 1, which is not very positive, and then video 2, which really shows the reality of braceros in the United States. Okay. So this was, again, belonging transformation in place. So what do they do with all this? So students now understand that there's different ways in which different ways in which you can express similar messages, okay? They know what a persuasive essay is. They know how to, they work with the important linguistic aspects that we need to take into account when we're writing a persuasive essay, and now what they need to do is to write a persuasive essay, okay? And that is applying appropriately. So in applying appropriately, Kalantzis and Cont say that, students do or produce a document similar to the one they've been working with, okay? So this is what students needed to do. Again, of course, like I tell my graduate students in my methods class, you always need to remember that, you need to engage in a process of guided discovery, okay? It's your students who have to discover, but you need to guide them. You need to be, be present, and you need to have very specific instructions, okay? So the whole idea is that they were supposed to, I gave them, a couple of articles about workers in Salinas, and the importance of Hispanics in Salinas as part of the workforce. Some of them were negative, some of them were positive, and they were supposed to use the evidence to write a persuasive essay in favor of Latino workers in Salinas, okay? And so they were supposed to, so I gave them this, and then they were supposed to work with their partners to develop the whole information. I gave them specifically, the first, you have to talk about information about Salinas, the importance for our economy in the United States and in California, then the importance of Hispanic workers, and then they were supposed to give 3 different ideas to support the thesis and provide evidence for that. So this is what they did. And they wrote their persuasive essays, and then they work. I had a lot of peer review work, and I also provided them with comments, and then they wrote 2 drafts of the persuasive essay. So this is applying creatively. It's doing more or less the same as the text they were exposed to. But then you have applying, applying appropriately. And then you have, of course, applying creatively. So in applying creatively, what students are supposed to do is to use the new knowledge, but they have to produce something that is different, that is more creative, that is not the same mode of communication, okay? So it's not the same printed text. It has to be something that is perhaps hybrid, right? And for this, applying creatively, what I did was to ask them to interview a worker. So they were supposed to create the questions, they had to interview the worker, and then they were supposed to report on the opinions of this person, and then they had to connect those opinions to the persuasive essay. So that was applying creatively, okay? So this is the way in which I have used the framework to create materials for my heritage language learners. And the beauty of the framework is that, and you can see here, and that's why I've given you this, because you have different kinds of activities that you can use, okay? And also they have a wonderful website, it's New Learning, Transformational and Designs for Pedagogy and Assessment, where you can find examples of the kind of activities that people can create using this framework. And that's the beauty of it, is that it's practical, it is, there's a theory behind it, it's based on systemic functional linguistics. It was born in Australia. So you see the work of Holiday and Hassan, yeah. You have a theoretical framework, you have research behind it, so this is what we need in pedagogy. We need to have theoretically sound materials, okay, and also materials that are good for our students. So this is something that, you know, you might want to try, okay, I had very good results, and one of the things that my students said, I mean, I have very good results at the instructional level, but I also had very good results at the personal level, because students felt that they were represented in the materials. They felt that, you know, their reality was there, and they felt that they were being respected, okay? And you don't get that with a textbook. You don't get that with a textbook, because a textbook is for anyone. And also the problem with textbooks is that you have to do mostly what the publisher wants. So even if you want to do, if you do something, you know, that is innovative, they say, oh, that's not going to sell, because, you know, teachers need this. No, they don't. And then this is the beauty of OER. This is the beauty of people, you know, like I told Carl, with OER, I mean, with COERLL, I felt that I had found people with, you know, who I shared my love of education, and also kindred spirits, you know, and so this is, and I think that this is the main thing that I want to, that's the reason why I am doing what I'm doing. I think we need to do this. We need to do this. We need to get together and need to prepare pedagogical materials, but that are theoretically sound, and so we can show people, oh, you know, that what we're doing, the methodology is important, you know, and this is what we need. You know, I also want, and this is a struggle that I face every day as language program director. People don't respect me. They think that, you know, I am not a researcher, that I don't do research, you know, that creating pedagogy is very simple. No, it's not. No, it's not. And what we do is based on theories. It's based on pedagogical frameworks that are based on theory and that people have been doing research on for a long time. So I think this is our mission. And another thing, you know, listening to all the talks, I mean, one of the things that I tell my graduate students is like, and this is something that I struggled with in my department too, but not just my department, every place that I've been, where I've been, I mean, it's been the same. When people say, oh, Haitian speakers don't speak well, I mean, they're just like, what? What are you talking about? So I tell them, you know, there's no correct or incorrect. It's appropriate or it's not appropriate for the social situation. So if you want to use AIGA with your mom, that's fine. I don't care if you use AIGA, because that's what you are communicating with your mom, and that's your code. Don't tell me it's not correct. Now, you're going to write a letter asking for a position, you cannot use it. Because, no because, you know, I'm a prescriptivist, but, you know, the person that might be reading that letter might say, oh, this person is not educated. So then we have to also address those things if we're going to teach them academic Spanish, for example. But I think that, you know, but it's our mission. I mean, we have to tell them, you know, the Spanish that you speak is wonderful. You're wonderful people, you know. It's not incorrect, you know. So, anyways, that's what I tell my students. Anyways, let me show you one more thing, okay? And this is more like for what we're doing in our program. Oh, these are the photos. So that I found for you guys, if you want to adapt this module, because all the photos that I had were wonderful, but they come from a book. But this one is open source. And it's the same, it's more or less the same as the SIGA, you know, the SIGA's art is beautiful. But this is beautiful too, and it's a mural. This is something that, for example, at Texas A&M, a lot of our students, you know, are in the military. And this is a beautiful photo, okay? It's a Latina, you know, in the military. I mean, this is from the Army, and then it's Air Force, and then you can use it. It's open source, okay? So there are a lot of things, out there. It's just, I understand, it takes a lot of work to create activities, but that's the reason why, we can all collaborate. Let me just show you what we're doing with our L2 students is digital magazines, and we frame them within the framework of the Learning by Design framework. So it's basically what they need to know is they have to apply their Spanish to talk about aspects of their lives, to introduce themselves and other members of the class to Spanish speakers. So they have to create magazines that in this case, in this particular, in Spanish 201, that have to do with their experience as students at Texas A&M. So everything is about what is one of the things that at least I don't know about here because I don't know much about students at UT. But one of the things that I was really surprised with when I started my position at Texas A&M is how much they love Texas. My God, students love Texas. They love A&M and they love Texas. It's just they are so proud of being Texans, it's never happened to me, teaching in other universities. So I said, okay. And they love, talking about, of course, this is a generation, the selfie generation. They love talking about themselves and, so they love talking about their families. So I said, okay, I have to do this. Belonging. So what I decided to do was to create these projects, and what we do is this: all the things that we have modules, so they create a little bit of the magazine at a certain point during the semester, and what we have is that everything that they are created is related to what they are doing in class, to the topics that they are discussing, and also to the structures and the vocabulary they are using in class. So then again, they analyze the vocabulary, they know the structures, and then they have to use that to create, to produce, a part of the magazine. Now, before we do that, we discuss what a digital magazine is like, what it looks like, and then how different it is from a paper magazine. So then we go through experiencing the known, what do you know about magazines, then experiencing the new, what a digital magazine looks like, and then we go through, conceptualizing, because we need to know how a digital magazine, is structured. We go through, again, understanding what a digital magazine looks like, and then we go through analyzing functionally, looking at the language that we're going to use in each part, Then the kind of message that we want to convey, and then we talk about, for example, the photos. Why are you going to use the photo of, you with your dog? What kind of message are you conveying about that particular photo of you with your dog? Oh, I love my dog. Yes, but what do you want people to know about yourself if you're presenting yourself with your dog? So we analyze, and this is literacy. This is the literacy that they need, the visual literacy. And then they have to combine the modes. They have to combine the idea of, photograph and printed text, and they also have to introduce videos. And I'll show you the template that we give them, and that's it. I'm not doing this because I think, oh, these materials are wonderful. It's because they are working for us, and they are, so I give them, the template. Yeah, because they have to create something to define themselves, and I said, Pepita Pérez, una chica singular. And then so they have the introduction, and then they have questions to guide them. But I wanted to show you that when it comes to, they talk about places in the world, because we could talk about places in the class. We talk about the language of traveling, the language of, different places, tourism. And so they have to talk about their favorite place in the world. And here they have to introduce a video. Basically, they have to choose a video that, in a way, represents that particular place that they love. I'm all for Scotland. Oh, I love Scotland. Yes. So anyway, so C is multimodal. What they have to produce is multimodal. So this is what we're doing too. So I'm doing the same thing, and then our project is to, by the year 2020. We'll have a language program that is based completely on open source materials. We are already working on that. My students are going, they have a camera and they're going around the university just already videotaping, and, Yes, so this is our plan. And, when I tell publishers, they hate me. I don't care. But, yeah, I am the most hated woman when it comes to language teaching because, I want to get rid of them. Publishers. Anyway, so, yes. So as you can see, you can do this. I mean, this is, and again, you don't have to do this alone. We can collaborate, and and that's the wonderful thing about it. So anyways, with Scotland, I leave you to your thoughts. Thank you so much. Thank you.